at least until her paintings began to sell. Ashley sighed and ran her hand through her short-cropped dark hair. She studied the ad in the paper once more. Care worker for adult group home. Some medical training preferred. Salary and benefits. As mundane as it sounded, it might be just the job she wanted. She'd checked with her father and found out that caregiver pay tended to be barely above minimum wage. She'd be working mostly with Alzheimer's patients, people with dementia or other age-related illnesses, folks unable to survive on their own. She would have wrinkled bodies to tend, hairy chins to wipe, and most likely diapers to change. The job wasn't glamorous. But Ashley didn't mind. She had reasons for wanting the job. Since returning from her sojourn in Paris, everything about her life had changed. She was only 25, but she felt years older, jaded and cynical. She rarely laughed, and she wasn't the kind of mother Cole needed. Despite the head she turned, she felt old and used up, even ugly. Paris was partly to blame for who she had become, but much of it was due to all the running she had done since then, running from her parents' viewpoints, their tiresome religion, their attempts to mold her into a woman she could never be, and running from Landon Blake, from his subtle but persistent advances and the predictable lifestyle she'd be forced into if she ever fell in love with him. Whatever the reason, she was aware that something tragic had happened to her heart in the 4 years since she had come home from Europe. It had grown cold, colder than the wind that whipped across Bloomington, Indiana in mid-January, and that, in turn, was affecting her only true passion, her ability to paint. She still worked at it, still filled up canvases, but it had been years since she did anything truly remarkable. Ashley turned off South Walnut and began searching for the address of the group home. In addition to bringing in a paycheck, working with old people might ward off the cold deep within her, might even melt the ice that had gathered around her soul over the years. She had always felt a kind of empathy for old folks, an understanding. Somehow they stirred a place in her heart that nothing else could touch. She remembered driving through town a week ago and seeing 2 ancient women hunched over gnarled old girls, probably in their 90s, walking arm in arm down the sidewalk. They had taken careful, measured steps, and when one started to slip, the other held her up. Ashley had pulled over that afternoon and studied them from a distance, thinking they'd make a good subject for her next painting. Who were they, and what had they seen in their long lifetimes? Did they remember the tragedy of the Titanic? Had they lost sons in World War II, or had they themselves served somehow? Were the people they loved still alive or close enough to visit? Had they been beautiful, flitting from one social event to another with a number of handsome boys calling after them? And did they grieve the way they'd become invisible now that society no longer noticed them? Ashley watched the women step carefully into an intersection and then freeze with fear when the light turned, catching them halfway across. An impatient driver laid on his horn, honking in sharp staccato patterns. The expression on the women's faces became nervous and then frantic. They hurried their feet, shuffling in such a way that they nearly fell. When they reached the other side, they stopped to catch their breath, and again Ashley wondered. Was this all that was left for these ladies? Angry drivers impatient with their slow steps and physical challenges? Was that all the attention they'd receive on a given day? The most striking thing about the memory was that as the questions came, Ashley's cheeks had grown wet. She popped down the visor and stared at her reflection. Something was happening to her that hadn't happened in months, years even. She was crying. And that was when she had realized the depth of her problem. The fact was, her experiences had made her cynical. And if she was ever going to create unforgettable